Okay, so question 14 in section point 1 tells me to solve the following. And I have x1 minus 3x2 equals 5. I have negative x1 plus x2 plus 5x3 equals 2. I have x2 plus x3 equals 0. Now, you are correct. You've not done reduced echelon form yet, or reduced row echelon form yet. So you could just go about solving this with the system. However, I would suggest starting off using kind of reduced row echelon form. And then when you get to the point where you've solved for 1, you can go back in and plug it in. And that's what I did. So I took my system here. Let's see, I only need 3. So this is going to be 1, negative 1, 0, because here's my x1s. And then I have negative 3, 1, 1. There's my x2s. And then my x3s will be 0, 5, 1. And of course, those answers are 5, 2, and 0. And I've noticed in your book, they don't draw a little line right here. Sometimes when we are dealing with matrices and doing reduced row echelon form, we'll draw a little line there. It helps students understand that those are the answers. Okay, those aren't the X's. You can choose probably not to draw the line, since if she's not drawing the line, you don't draw the line. I'm going to put the line there just kind of so you can see when we actually get to one of the answers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take row 1 and I'm going to add row 2, and I'm going to make that row 2 because my goal is to get something of the form like 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, and that equals, of course, a set of answers over here, some number, some number, some number, okay? Because what that tells me, that's x2, that means 1x1 would equal like whatever you got for number 1, and then 1x2 will equal whatever you got for number 2, and then x3 would equal whatever you got for number 3. Okay, so the goal is to get something like 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay, and then you have your answers on the other side. Now, like I said, since you haven't done that in 1.1 yet, you can just get close. If we can get it down to, like, say, maybe the x3 right there, we've got a 1 right there, then you can go ahead and plug them back in, because it's left where this system is set up where all you really need is an x3, and then you could solve the first equation. And then from there, you could, or you could solve the second one. You'll see. It'll work out pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to add together row 1 and row 2. And that will leave me, so I'm changing row 2. So I just go ahead and I write down row 1 and row 3 because they're not changing. Okay. Now, so I'm going to say row 1 plus row 2. That gives me the new row 2. So 1 and negative 1 gives me 0. Negative 3 and 1 gives me negative 2. And 0 and 5 gives me 5. And 5 and 2 gives me 7. Okay. So that first column looks really good. Okay. Now I'm going to work on, I decided, and it doesn't really matter what order you do it. That's what makes this difficult. It kind of just depends on what you see. So I want to make this right here turn into a 0, okay? So that's just what I saw first. And I thought I can easily do that if I can take row 1 and I can add to it 3 times row 3, and that gives me the new row 1. Now, I know I have to do some operation with changing row 2 or row 3 and adding it to row 1 because beneath the 1 in the first column are zeros. I don't want that 1 to change because then I have to go back and redo some more work. Okay, so I know that row 1 is going to change. So I leave row 2. I go ahead and write it down. And I write down row 3 because that's not the one I'm changing. I am multiplying times 3, but I don't change him. I leave him there. So now I'm ready to deal with row 1. So I have pretty much 1 plus 3 times 0, which is 1. Then I have negative 3 plus 3 times 1. That's row 3. And that gives me 0. Then I have 0 plus 1 times 3, which gives me 3. And you go, oh, no, we changed the 0 there. We did, but we'll go back and fix that later. It's okay. And then 0 times 3 is 0, plus 5 is 5. Okay? So that's not looking too bad. So the next thing I go is, well, since I know I don't have to get it all the way to reduced row echelon form, because you haven't learned that yet, it just says solve the system. So I'm solving the system as best I can. I decide I'm going to get rid of this. Because if I can get rid of that, then that just leaves me one answer in X3, and then I'll have an answer in the X column, in the answer column. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take row 2, okay? And I'm going to add 2 times row 3 to that to give me row 3. Okay, so 1 stays the same. 2 stays the same. And now I'm ready for 3. So I'm going to say row 2 plus 2 times row 3. So 0 plus 2 times 0 is 0. Then I have negative 2, that's row 2, plus 2 times 1, which is row 3. That's going to give me 0. Then I have row 2, which is 5, plus 2 times row 3, which is 1, gives me 7. And then I have 7 plus 2 times row 3, which is 0. So 7 plus 0 is 7. Now, this is really important for me right here because nothing said I had to complete reduced row echelon form. I just had to solve. Well, what this tells me, x1, x2, x3, my answers, this says right here, since I have 0, 0, then 7, this equation is really saying 0 times x1 plus 0 times x2 plus 7 times x3 equals 7, which means I can solve for x3. That means that x3 equals 1. Now, let's see what else I have here. This top one tells me I have 1x1, so I have x1 plus 0x2 plus 3 times x3 equals 5. Well, I know what x3 equals. So that gives me x1 plus 0 times x2 is just 0 plus 3 times 1 equals 5. Now I can solve for x1. So x1 equals 2. Okay? Now I have x1 and x2, which means I can solve this middle one right here. Because it is saying I have 0 times x1 minus 2 times x2 plus 5 times x3 equals 7. Well, we don't even need x1, so I have negative 2 times x2 plus 5 times 1 equals 7. That gives me negative 2 times x2 equals 2, so x2 equals negative 1. And there are your answers.